Maggie and Will and the team all together, right?
Sure.
Okay. So Maggie is the author of Couplets, forthcoming from FSG USA and Faber and Faber UK in early 2023. And her poems have appeared in the New Yorker, the Paris Review, Poetry, Kenyon Review. I went to Kenyon College. Bomb, The Nation, and elsewhere. She is a lecturer at Yale and a senior editor at the Yale Review. Will Epstein is a composer, improviser, and songwriter born in New York City. He has created scores for Martha Graham, a forthcoming film about Nam June Paik, and installations at the Metropolitan Museum, among others. He has released collections with the label Other People, and his forthcoming album, Wendy, will be released later this year. Will be joined by Eli Cruz on electronic wind synthesizer, Renata Zigur, voice and violin. Did I say your name right? Ziger, thank you. And Spencer Zahn on double bass. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I'm so honored and excited to be here. I'm just opening my folder of poems. It's really an honor to be presenting work with Arlene, who I've been a fan of as a human and an artist for a very long time. And thank you to T-Space, to Stephen, to Susan, to everybody who made this happen, this wonderful congregation. I'm so happy to be with everybody today and to be performing alongside Eli and Renata and Spencer and my very good friend Will. So thank you all for coming out. I'm going to be reading poems from the book that Susan mentioned, which is called Couplets, and it is in rhyming couplets. And that's all you need to know.
And I think just about the way
Yes, okay.
We're going to be alternating pieces, so Maggie's going to read and we're going to perform, and the whole thing will be about 30 minutes.
Right, I was supposed to say that. Please hold your applause until the end, and we'll be alternating music. Yes, hopefully you have some, and we'll be alternating between poetry and music, kind of back and forth, echoing together. Couplets. I became myself. I became myself. No, I always was myself. There's no such person as myself. I wouldn't have to turn my eye inward, I thought, if I could train my eye on him, the one I loved. But I was wrong. My eye loved everything it fell upon. And then one day it fell upon a mirror, and he was nowhere in the mirror, and she was everywhere. All my life I've shown up late, but when I do, I compensate for my delay. I laugh and preen and carry on as if I had been present all along. I stayed in utero, for instance, 2 weeks after I was due, then came out so decisively and fast I couldn't breathe. I spent my first night on Earth alone inside a tent flushed full of oxygen, the event from which my dad believes have sprung like fires all my weird anxieties. Mostly I can't see myself at all until I sense in someone else a parallel, like how I only realize what I want at the moment I attain it, my mind the final part of me to know. I've hurt people I love being so late to my desires. Last year, I met someone I thought I couldn't live without, and in the process lost another without whom I thought I'd die. If only I had realized sooner, etc., etc. But I handled things ineptly and he left. I didn't die. Instead, I went to therapy and saw the Stegosaur uptown, stayed with friends, and drank a lot of tea. Even then, riding the bus to visit my new lover, I was breathless always, early almost never. I tried to stay away from her, could not. I'd turn to J or T and say, today's the day it stops. Nothing right should feel this dirty, nothing real, this quicksilver and fanged. I kept thinking of that show, My Strange Addiction, which was enjoying a comeback among my peers in those months, despite its cancellation years before, conceptual depravity, and total exploitation of its cast. Reality TV seemed newly relevant, I guess, as life itself grew ever more fictitious, perpendicular to time. Obsession was a subject that obsessed me, regardless of its object, but I hated watching strangers getting hurt by theirs, doll collecting, surgery, ingesting dirt and glass. There was no joy depicted, just decrepitude, abjection, musty rooms. If I directed one, my show would air the pleasures of compulsion and be named, Screw It, I'm Going to Text Her, or Nothing's Wrong, You're Just in Love Again, or True Life, Turning 28 in Brooklyn. There are many ways, of course, of telling it, but each account obscures some other version equally true. One is that I lied to everyone I knew. Another, and this one I really do believe, is that for years I loved him more than me. I can conjure even now our first apartment's tile, white diamonds in their blue argyle frieze around the sink, the dirty grout I'd scour with a toothbrush while he was out at work. I can count 4 bath mats over 8 years, hear the record player catch every time we stood up from the table. And I can still feel the invisible moat we both believed in, on the other side of which we knew lay torment, exile, wreckage, the anarchy of singledom, loss upon loss. I remember testing it, the moat, throwing across a rope to check its breadth, twice to the waist, wading in before retreating, shamefaced, reining myself back. To him it was a sea, I think, entirely impassable. To me, it was a dizzying ravine that circled us for years, then cut between. times I could feel myself become him. Those tics I'd found most tiresome, his artificial cheer, his trick of going silent in the heat of conflict, or accusing me of being self-indulgent without ever specifying what he meant, suddenly belonged to me, my temper having lifted in our time together some properties of his. His ideas crowded my head as if through an earpiece. His hands' phantom weight guided my own. His scowl in my mirror, and in my microphone his speech, down to the voice's note of spite, the patronizing diagnosis, the words I'd used to scold her when she told a tasteless joke. It was the same old dialectic I'd thought I'd left behind. This is partly why I thought I'd lost my mind. But when she'd start to plunge into depression, as I've often done, curled in bed or prostrate on the ground, listing all the people she'd let down, it was by remembering how he had soothed me that I soothed her. And when I held her cheek against my cheek, I was drawing from the well of love he filled. So I became, after all, not him exactly, but a kind of conduit between them, a conversation they conducted with my mouth. And when I was not unbelievably sad, I was moved unbelievably to hold inside me both my lovers and to introduce them to each other, there, in the hollow, just above the heart, among the little folds where the voice starts. Some mornings, leaving my girlfriend's house, I'd glimpse my whole existence, all its eras, as a single arc, unified, unbroken. I saw a person who kissed mostly men, wrote poems in the prevailing style, owned a cat. I saw a different person after that, and before I saw a little girl. What was I saying? That there were these different selves. I need you to see them. They were shapes made out of lines, and then one day they all began to cross the lines, as if by some obscure design, the analysis of which became the purpose of my life. Or maybe the pattern was my life, and its analysis merely my living. Sexuality is, after all, a formal concern, finding for one's time on earth a shape that feels more native than imposed, a shape in which desire, having chosen it, can multiply. And isn't love itself a type of rhyme? And don't gender and genre share one root? Maybe I really am a poet, needing as I do from these imperfect sets that constitute a self the lie of sense. The second adolescence, like the second first love, is a time we have few legends of. I wear the weight of mine around my throat and finger it in worried moods. My wild oat, my tonsil stone, my souvenir from when I stepped, directed by desire like June Jordan from the script. I wish that reckoning on no one and on everyone, to witness what can happen when we press the cobalt button that says bye, the long human machine begun, the hands that fly among the storeroom shelves, the possible conceding choice by choice to the immutable. There is frequently the feeling of a garden, the feeling of chasing a garden. If I have to pass the factory and morgue along the way, if I have to cross the river someone thought to give the fatted name of Superfund, still I couldn't spurn the air, its moribund perfumes. In lieu of resolution, then, a question: will the next time be as doomed as this one? Cold, ecstatic, walking through the breezeway to the perfume shop where I was a habitué that year, which sold fragrances with biomes as their names, insisting that the body was a place where events occurred rather than a thing to which they happened, to say nothing of the cause of such events. And buying one that advertised itself as woodland, bosky, sylvan, some tree-ish word, and name-dropped Judith Butler on the label, misting my nape with it and feeling sexual and unashamed like a beautiful deciduous mutt of language. Oh, I know how ridiculous what it was I thought in that moment. I am my own husband. But I couldn't stop. I felt that way, bonded to myself by my authority alone. No one beside me, no one on the phone. And going home, writing what I'd seen and heard, adding detail, deepening the hue, switching a word to change or nix a sound, feeling my tongue exult in flights by which experience might vault beyond the mind, become an externality. Like cells, it's still miraculous to me. Love found me twice at once. If it never happens again, I'll still be luckier than the moon. Breathing, typing these lines, texting a friend, checking the time, thinking it wouldn't always be like this, but still, sometimes it was. It is. Thank you.